So on our panel, obviously, we have Dr. Insel, we have Dr. Richard.
My patients call me creepy.
Craigie from the American Academy for Pediatrics. We have Dr. Jean Kogan from the Eating Disorders Coalition. Steffi Bauer from the Academy for Eating Disorders, and Susan Ringwood from in the UK. And Dr. O'Toole is the moderator.
Dr. Craigie has another name. It's the Energizer Bunny. He is the most active, relentless advocate for children and adolescents you will ever meet. Okay, let's talk about it. What is the way forward? And what are the core issues for parents and above all for children? We're talking about children here who have eating disorders. Dr. Insel, I'd like you to elaborate, if you would, on something I think you said that was incredibly important, that I know everybody has some experience with, and that is conveying the severity of these illnesses. This core issue that hasn't been done. Children die of these disorders. Young adults die of these disorders, and adults die of these disorders. And somehow that knowledge, which is not widely disseminated, has got to jet fuel our determination to do things differently.
So I'd say two things. One is the importance of having numbers and stories matter. But the second thing, and I think that's actually the easy part, we have that to some extent here, but what we don't have yet is the big media push. You know, they attempt to really make this a public health or public issue in the way that has happened with autism, in a major way in a very short time. And it's worth studying that process to see what they did and how they did it. And you know, there are some aspects of anorexia or eating disorders which are quite different than what you deal with autism, but in many ways, its prevalence is probably comparable. The severity, in some cases, is worse here in terms of the mortality, and it's probably worth thinking about how do you get more attention paid to this issue. And why is it so difficult to talk about? Even families who don't want any other families to know what they're struggling with. And we've seen that in other areas as well. Like in autism, that would have been true a decade ago, and now the advocacy community has come together, families have come together, there are major campaigns, there are walks, there are TV shows, there are all kinds of events to try to increase awareness. And maybe that's what's in store here. But that's just one possibility.
Should we just pass the mic on down? Everybody probably has something to say to this critical issue. This one.
Okay, I'm Rich Craigie, and my patients do call me creepy. I'm trained in Philadelphia, so I take it, I don't take it very seriously. In fact, when I first see a patient, I have my white coat on. I put my name, my finger over my last first name, and MD, and I say, "What do you think most patients call me?" And they kind of look, and then they start to smile, and I sit and they, "But oh, I can't say this." "Yeah, it's okay. Can't report out." "Dr. Creepy." I said, "Right, because what I'm going to tell you, you might not want to hear. I'm not here to be popular. I'm here to help you get healthy." And I think that's a very important thing that a lot of pediatricians, a problem with pediatricians is they like everybody to like them. I think those of us in adolescent medicine, we realize the kids don't necessarily like us, so that's our job is not to be like us, to help kids get healthy. I think that when I first came into the eating disorder world, and I heard that there was, this kind of the way that patients were treated, John Sargent actually was the person who coined the term parentectomy at CHOP. And I said, wait a minute, are parents a malignant influence? Because I had never seen a patient. I had 4 years of medical school, 3 years of residency, 1 year chief residency at St. Christopher's Hospital for Children, the second oldest children's hospital in the country. And when I was chief resident going in to sign out rounds, I put my hand on the doorknob, going on rounds, and the resident said, "You can't go in there." I took my hand, I said, "I'm the chief resident, I can go anywhere I want." And they said, "Wait a minute, she has anorexia nervosa." And honest to God, 2 weeks before I started my fellowship in adolescent medicine in Rochester, I said, Is that contagious? I had never heard the term anorexia nervosa. We trained in the ghetto hospital. The kids who had eating disorders in Philadelphia all go to Children's Hospital in Philadelphia at the time. We now have kids at St. Chris. But I think it was good because I came in as a pill tabula rasa. I was taught as a pediatrician, you always assume that parents are doing the best they can. So when you had a 5-year-old kid who was being abused by the parent, okay, there must be something that says parents need more resources because they're beating up on their kid and no parent wants to beat up on their kid. So I think that one of the values of pediatrics is we automatically come from the point of view of we partner with parents. So when I first see a parent with a patient with an eating disorder and they come in feeling very upset, the first question I ask them is, each step along the way as you're raising your son or daughter, did you do what we thought was in their best interest? And I've never heard anybody say yes, or they might say yes, but. I said, no, you can't say but, because that's the way it is. And I said, so what we need to do is move forward. You're doing the best you could, and you got a lousy situation. Your daughter or son has a brain, I like to use brain circuitry disorder. And we need to move forward with that. Because I don't just think telling parents, oh, you didn't cause it, and don't worry about it. I think you have to listen to what parents are concerned about as a pediatrician, because they may be worried about something else that you never really thought of. And I also believe that the pediatrician can be invaluable because you can start to identify the family issues. So, the mother blames the father blames the mother, especially in families that are no longer together. And I'd say that, it's very important, even though you're no longer husband and wife, you're always going to be mother and father, and somehow we've got to make this work. Figure out how to make it work. And so when we make the referral to our mental health providers, we are able to, I think, make a positive referral because we do understand the dynamics. For years, I'm glad that Dr. Mitchell mentioned about developmental orders. I've said for years we need to frame these as developmental illnesses, not mental illnesses, because of the stigmatization associated with them. We actually are doing some studies in Rochester on sex shifting in terms of brain function in kids with eating disorders. And when I propose to pediatricians, I do a lot of workshops for pediatricians, when I say you need to partner with parents, you are the executor of their wills. Parents are feeling powerless, hopeless, urgent, and in crisis. You need to say, okay, what do you want me to do to help fix that situation? And we're in partnership. So I'm the executor of your work. So when your daughter is in the hospital, I'm acting in loco parentis. I'm acting on your behalf. So what is it that you want to have happen? Because you can't put an NG tube. But if she really can't eat, I might need to help her. Might need to help her recover by getting an NG tube. And so I think that the more that pediatricians can do a partnership, and we clearly need to keep teaching pediatricians, adolescent medicine specialists, etc., family practitioners, and I think we're trying to get the message out there. But I think as long as we all focus on what's in the best interest of the child, and especially for healthcare providers to do more listening than they do talking. I run a support group for parents for the last 22 years now, and one dad used to get up and say, I realized God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth, so I listen twice as much as I talk. And I say that back to the providers as well. So, my random thoughts.
Thank you.
After listening to Dr. Inzal, I'm just feeling even more excited about the F.E.A.S.T Act, which I know we've talked to you about yesterday a bit, the federal response to eliminate eating disorders, because I think it really brings alive the research section. And I was imagining, wow, what if that bill passed and we actually had these centers of excellence and we were able to do the exact thing that you were putting out there, really focusing on genomics and etc. So I think that is a wonderful way for us to, what's the steps ahead? Well, one is let's get that bill passed. Now, we also know it's been a very challenging Congress. So I think in the interim, there's other things that we can do. So possibly maybe just getting pieces of the F.E.A.S.T Act passed, such as the research section, or even just focusing maybe on the centers of excellence. So that may be something we can do. And when I say we, I don't just mean, me and a few people that work with the EDC, but I actually mean you. I mean we, parents. So part of, I think, what can help us teach people, at least members of Congress and federal people who are at places like HHS that are working on implementing the Affordability Care Act and defining the essential health benefit, we can help them understand how serious this issue is. You know, we bring a face to it. So we just want to invite all of you to come to our next lobby day in April, and let's have everyone in this room be able to talk to your member of Congress and tell them things that you've had to, your challenges, as well as your triumphs, because I think both of those pieces are really important for us to be getting out to folks. It's sort of the theme that, or one of the themes that came out of our conversation is, how do we get this new information out without it hitting people with this hopelessness, and that's our jobs. So when we're going and talking to members of Congress, or even if you can't come, because it costs money to come here, you can write letters, I think as a family, we can really have an impact and do. So just to kind of, again, highlight, because a lot of you were probably tired and getting some fresh air. It was a beautiful day yesterday. Didn't hear about this part, so I just want to reiterate it. The Health and Human Services is currently doing a lot of hard, dedicated work in coming up with how to implement the Affordability Care Act and in designing or figuring out what's going to be included in the essential health benefits. We're at the table now because we've done a lot of work, and you all, a lot of you in this room, helped us get there because we wrote letters. More than 200 people wrote comments to HHS saying, we need to make sure eating disorders are addressed, that they're part of the mental health portion. We need to make sure various levels of care are reimbursed, etc. So you all can make an impact and make a difference, and just keep on doing it. And thank you for all of you who've been doing it. And Laura Collins, I want to just do a shout out to her, because I think she has come to Lobby Day. She has done so much. She has brought all of you together. And she was there with her daughter in her recovery. And so let's just all give her a huge
Before we pass the mic a little bit further, Dr. 5 minutes. We want to hear from everybody, but for 5 minutes, Terrence, you have the ear, the head, of the NIH. That's a very big deal. Well, tell him, what do you want?
I want a consensus panel. I think did that happen for autism?
No.
No. Well, it needs to happen here. And, I think the other thing is supply and demand is what's going to do this. We can't say, are there centers of excellence out there? Unless we put a consensus panel out there and say what's needed. If we don't start demanding it, there'll be no reason to create centers. So I think we have to just put something out there. You said it's a brainstorm. What's the best practice? What's the best treatment? We have to start asking for it. And if we don't ask for it, there's not going to be a center that's created to train somebody if no one's asking for that service. It happened in autism. No one was trained in ABA, and little by little, it was an evolution, not, instead of a revolution. It has to be asked for, and then it'll be created.
Yes. Please stand up.
I have so many things I would love to be able to ask and say, and I've been sitting here racking my brain saying what would be the best thing, a distillation of all these thoughts, and it's not going to happen. So I just want to say that my daughter became sick when she was 8 years old. And I think that's very significant because for me, I think anorexia, we're going to find, is so multiply determined. I don't care if it's called a brain disorder. I think that it's a brain disorder, and it's affected by environment greatly and genetics. And, my daughter was genetically loaded. My husband had an eating disorder. My sister had one. I came to find out my grandmother probably had one. And I saw signs in my little girl at 3 that made me concerned, not about eating, other things, OCD-type symptoms, not the disorder. And then later on, I saw other things, onset of depression at 8 years old, anxiety. And I think to myself, I wonder if I had implemented some sort of structured eating. If I had spoken to my pediatrician when she was 8, and he was not dismissive of me and saying, don't put that label on her, she's 8, that's not what's going on. When I so intuitively knew that something was going on. And if perhaps my pediatrician had said, yeah, maybe in this case, because she has all of these predisposing factors, maybe for her, you shouldn't say, don't make her eat, or just have her eat what she wants to eat, which I think is sort of the common thing that pediatricians do say, the old school, you're going to sit at that table and finish. Well, I'm not saying that's what we go to, but perhaps we need to look at with children who have predisposing factors, and when you see the confluence of so many of these things, perhaps if I had had the strength to go with what I believed, which was, I think probably I have to really keep an eye on this little kid and make sure that every meal we're sitting down together or somebody's watching her so that it never went there. I think my daughter may not have even developed anorexia. I'm just saying, little kids are getting this, I think that it's, I just hate to see that anybody is even suggesting that it's all environment or that it's all brain. It's just not helpful, and that's all I really want to say.
Thank you. So if I could distill your comment into listen to parents and give them credence.
Yes.
Also better train the pediatricians. The American Academy of Pediatrics.
Better training of pediatricians. Well, amen to that. Please.
Well, I just want to say, kind of piggybacking on that, I'd love to see an APD about weight loss in children, all children, and especially the siblings of a child who has been diagnosed with an eating disorder. For parents, pediatricians, everybody.
10 words or less, message to everybody. What do you want?
Parents will be accountable. We want to be the voice of accountability and bring reality to the table. This is a severe acute illness.
You wanted to say something? Don't be shy.
Criteria for Center of Excellence. I came over here telling my children that I want to open up a treatment center modeled after the UC-F.E.A.S.T program, the treatment program, and I'm committed to that, and I'm throwing that out there. And I have no idea how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it. And also, as this lady suggested, sibling risk. I've got a 15-year-old now, a 14-year-old that is suddenly changing her eating habits, and this has just started in the last couple of weeks, and I'm very good at listening to them.
Yes, Dr. Inslee talks about how we need a media push, for getting this message out, and I just wanted to talk about how a lot of parents with kids with eating disorders, ones that have come forward with their stories, oftentimes it gets sensationalized. A lot of the science that the latest research we try and convey to these reporters gets cut. The headlines are terrible. They throw in details about how little a person eats every day. It's just not the message that we need. And I feel like we need your help. We need more scientific agency with credibility to do some of this media push, because we're not getting the respect that we need.
Let's hear from this side of the room, and then we should hear from our two other panelists. That would be great. Yes.
Well, I had a question when you were talking about, you said that early diagnosis and early intervention is the best way to cure anything. Well, how would you get parents to take their kid to even think that they might have an eating disorder you know, they probably wouldn't even go to the doctor to have that checked because they wouldn't even suspect it. I mean, in my own experience, my children were very, very healthy, a picture of health, and all their growing up time. And I never, ever expected, but my daughter at 19 developed an eating disorder.
You know, they're not from the same cause and they don't require the same treatments. And so we do have to recognize we're still at an early stage. And part of why I'm here and why I do what I do is that for the group of disorders that we're concerned about here, the group of disorders we're concerned about at NIMH, we are like at the 2% level. There's an awful lot we still need to know. It's that we're at a very early stage in trying to understand these. I think we're on a different path by saying we've got to understand it from a biological as well as a psychological perspective. And sometimes with biological pieces of this, you may not see the psychological change. It may be something that's really happening in a stealth way, and it requires a biomarker or something else that would even make you think that there could be a problem. That seems to be true for diabetes. It seems to be true in some areas. So all I'm suggesting is we have to be open and we have to be humble at this point that there's a lot we don't know. Last thing I'd say is you can really make a difference. I've got to tell you, I've seen this over and over again. I can do my best, but the stories, the passion, the insights are going to come as much from families as from anybody else. And that means doing what you're doing here, getting educated, coming together, supporting each other. But you can't just talk to each other. You have to talk to everybody else as well. And that's the harder part, and that's where things begin to change. We'll provide you the information to the extent that we have good science. Our job is to give you the best science. Your job is to make sure we're asking the right questions and getting the right science done and funding it. But you can be the engine of change here by getting what you know out to a much greater audience. Do you want the last word, Laura?
I want to thank you profoundly for being here, and I want you to know that having all of these parents here together to be able to speak to you and have you hear us means a great deal, and we want to support what you're doing to help our children get better. Thank you.
I would just like to make one comment. I don't want to cut the other folks off, but the American Academy of Pediatrics has a standard of care called Bright Futures, which you should have an annual visit. But most of the visits shouldn't be doing a physical exam, because by the time, if a patient doesn't have symptoms, they're not going to show much on a physical exam. And what the Bright Futures is a series of questions, and there are questions for both the parents and the kid. And we also have, as you get older, there's also a thing called Guidelines for Adolescent Preventive Services. You can go online, the AMA developed this, GAPS, GAPS, and that also has parents and kids forms. And what I would propose, you may only have 8 minutes with a physician, but if I have that form, and I can go down very quickly, identify where the problems are, I know where to start to focus my questions. And I hear the issue of my daughter was 19 years of age. One of my first patients with binge eating disorder, she was really angry because she had a class in psychology, and she said, they never talked about what I had. Well, it's just, 1990 something. And I said, what do you have? Well, I have binge eating disorder. I said, well, when was the first time you had a problem? I was 5 years of age, and I knew the day before I started my first day of school, I was going to get weighed by height and weight. And I felt fat, so I ran around the house for about an hour until I had to come in to go to sleep. And I think what we need to say is not, when we start to get the early symptoms, I think that's what Tom was talking about, early at diagnosis. I don't want to diagnose anorexia nervosa. I want to diagnose before anorexia nervosa that's headed that way, and to identify what's the problem. Because as far as I'm concerned, if a mother or father or anybody thinks there's a problem, it doesn't matter whether she has a diagnosis of anorexia nervosa or not, she's got a problem. It's the same thing I say to my patients.
With the parents, I wouldn't know if he has. I want you to do a drug test because I want to know if they have a drug problem. Well, drug tests aren't going to tell me if they have a drug problem. They're telling me if they excrete a certain amount of drug. So we've got a problem either way. And I think that's the better way to approach it. Is not does she or doesn't she, does he or doesn't he, but what is the issue? And you only get that by talking to people, and listen to people. So, sorry.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So I'm really delighted to be here as representative of the Academy. No, it's not. I don't think it's not. Okay. Is that better? Okay. So I'm really glad to be here as representative of the AED Academy for Eating Disorders, but also as a psychologist and a researcher from Germany. So I've really learned so much over the last 2 days, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here. And I think that's really a very good meeting and very interesting for me for many reasons. So I've talked to several people who asked me what is the Academy for Eating Disorders and what are you doing. So I will very quickly say something about the organization and then leave the rest of the time actually to hear from you what you think and which way our organizations could collaborate. We've talked about that this morning, so I would really like to contribute to facilitating exchange between the two groups and bring back to the Academy what you think is of most importance. So the AED is a professional organization, a global professional organization. We have about 1,500 members from very different disciplines, all working in the field of eating disorders from many countries around the world. And we're committed to education and research and treatment around eating disorders and related disorders. And we try to disseminate knowledge to professionals in the eating disorder field, but also outside the eating disorder field. So we've heard about this purple booklet this morning that was supported by AED to educate medical carers about eating disorders. If you can think of any other initiatives that you think would be valuable to be supported by AED, let us know so that we can discuss how we might be able to support that. I hope that we can start a dialogue for better collaboration between the groups, and I would like to hear from you what you think could be valuable contribution by AED.
Thank you, Steffi. I'm Susan Ringwood, and I'm the Chief Executive of F.E.A.S.T, which is the UK's non-profit supporting people with eating disorders and campaigning on their behalf. And it's fantastic to be part of this global community. And I do feel like I've got, you can't have more than 2 feet, but I've got feet in lots of different camps because I work with Steffi at the Academy, where we are part of a task force, the Patient and Carers Task Force, and driving forward a worldwide charter on eating disorders, which we can talk about. Happy to be, a member of the advisory board for F.E.A.S.T as well as running my own organisation in the UK. And I do think it's in that very act of collaboration that we can drive forward. Now, we don't agree about everything. Laura and I don't agree about everything. The Academy and I don't, maybe it's me, But, we are a broad church. We have to be a broad church. But we have got more in common than we've got differences. And the point that I picked up was about this media push and driving forward on this awareness. We really got to get out there with this message. If you could get a public service announcement, that would be fantastic.
It's in the F.E.A.S.T.
If you can make it happen, that would be really, really good. And it's about everybody having the power and the confidence to be able to speak out. Because I know how reluctant people feel to draw attention to themselves, but actually what you're doing is shining a light on the illness. And it thrives on secrecy, it loves the dark, don't let it hide in the dark. Shine a light on it, and bear witness to it, speak out, and don't let the disorder tell you you can't talk about it. And all of us can do that, whether we're clinicians, whether we're family members, whether we're, like me, someone who found myself in this world, I think, by the accident I don't believe. I knew nothing about eating disorders 9 years ago. I thought I'd never met anybody with an eating disorder. Nobody in my family had it. I didn't have a history myself. I only knew what I'd read in the women's magazines. That was the level of my lack of information. Okay, let's not keep just reading what we hear in the women's magazines. Let's get the right kind of information out there so that people like me who knew nothing, when they find it now, they find the right information and they know the way forward. Okay, thank you.
How can we help the women's magazines get it right? And you like they so easily get distracted by celebrities,
yes.
by images in the media causing eating disorders, things like that. Why can't we help them get that
there's one
scientific information?
There's one small bit we can do, and one campaigning point in the UK, where there are legal guidelines about the reporting of suicide. In our UK media, you cannot report how many drugs it takes for a lethal dose, how high you have to jump. You cannot report the physical means it takes to take your own life. You're not allowed to do that because it's dangerous. My point is, you should not be able to show the images of severe emaciation in the press. It's dangerous.
I have a recovered, what I call a RANK, recovered anorexic kid, and I also have one child on the Asperger's spectrum. And something that's bothering me a little bit is that we keep looking at the autism model as something that, oh, is going to work for us. And I think we have to find our own way because it's very, very different. When you have a child with an eating disorder, first of all, it's almost, thankfully, if you have the kind of child in acute mode that you get to early and help them to recover, it is something that, whether you call it remission, recovery, or whatever, they can move after a time into a completely normal life. So as a parent, that may be a period of time that you're in that life, and then you move beyond that. I think we are a very transient community in reality. I mean, there's few of us who have stayed. I mean, I'm very part-time. I occasionally go on the forum. I have a new life. I went from being 100% at home feeding my daughter to now having a full-time job. So the autism parents, their child may improve with therapies, but they're always going to have that autism and it's not going to go into remission. So I think we need to be really aware that a lot of our advocacy and a lot of our help is probably going to have to come from parents who have recovered children because those who are in the trenches can't do it, and the majority are going to move on. That's, so let's be careful, I think, just my opinion, when we look at these models, that we don't think that we can easily replicate what they're doing because it's very different things. My Asperger's child is very different than my daughter who's now living a fully normal life. The second thing is about the public campaigns. Autism didn't have something working against them. They were their own, syndrome, I don't like to call them syndrome, whatever it is called now, in isolation. We have in the United States a first lady who has a campaign, against obesity, and the message, a public service campaign, depending on how it's done, could be speaking against that other message. So that's a whole other thing. Anyway, that's just what I've been thinking about.
Thank you, Maria.
I really like the point about the transient nature of the community and how those whose kids have gotten better need to stick a bit and help out. But I just want to say that they're, apropos what Dr. Insel said about the variability in this disorder. They may not even be, we may call it anorexia nervosa today, and come to find out it's 5 different syndromes with a very different trajectory. And so there are going to be parents whose children are non-responders, who are going to feel sad and guilty because their child didn't get well in the same way that you're describing for some of them. Yes. And we need to hear from those parents both to destigmatize those who have this form of the illness, and also to make sure that we hear the whole story. Can I just respond to that?
Yes,
sure. Yeah.
This works. How this works. That's why organisations are so important. They carry forward the movement of individuals. So work through agencies, work through the coalition, work through F.E.A.S.T, work through B, because we take each individual story and build it on the shoulders of the one that comes next. And that's why your own story lives through the people who come next, and you take it forward in that way.
Really great points, and your second point about how we're like up against all this, not just Michelle Obama's campaign, but I mean the whole industry of thinness and et cetera and et cetera. So that does make us unique in some ways. And I just want to say one little thing about how do we get more in the media? To me, that's the $1 million question. The EDC gets called all the time, we get interviewed all the time, and I'll tell you, we never get the solution in the article. Never. They never talk about the solutions.
Because they want you to show pictures of starved kids.
And they, oh yeah, I mean this great New York Times article that came out, I mean I'll let Kathleen speak to this, she has her hand up, but you know, the EDC, we were interviewed, we, you know, gave them 1 million people, we didn't even give in that article, but you know, it happens a lot because what we're doing is we're trying to pass legislation that will actually improve things and make things better, and they just want to focus on what's broken and not working. So, I'd love anybody's ideas on this.
I'm going to give my boss an idea.
All right. So one of the things that we've been talking about, obviously, is the media piece, and I think we have a tough job ahead because of everything that everybody's said. We have a tough job ahead of us of getting proper and responsible stories shared via press. And one of the things that you can do is seek out reporters who you like the way that they report. I did that back in, I think, 2008 when, yeah, Carrie Reynolds here, she's a reporter.
I could hire.
We had a briefing for Lobby Day, and I sought out a reporter from Michigan because one of the people speaking at our Lobby Day was from Michigan, and I sought out a reporter who did responsible reporting on other issues, and I said, are you interested in this? And she's like, oh no, it really doesn't apply to Michigan. Actually, it does. And so then I kept on her, and I think that's part of it too. It's not an easy task, as Janine said. We talked with the New York Times reporter. We gave him other people who were then quoted in the article, but that went on for months, I think 8 or 9 months maybe, of talking. And so sometimes it takes more than one touch-in. But do that. Seek out a reporter who tells responsible stories on other issues, and see, are you interested in doing this story? If they say no, then say why not. And if they say because, well, then, you know, have a dialogue with them, and, you know, help them. And then also use guidelines. Make sure you follow the, you know, example that Susan brought up of responsible reporting. And I think Kitty Weston might say something about this too, and I'm going to paraphrase something that you did with, was it ABC, where you said, you know, no, if you're going to say those things, if you're going to share numbers, or if you're going to share pictures, then I'm pulling out of the story, and that is perfectly acceptable to do as well. But that's just one suggestion for getting it in the media more and more.
Right. Yeah, thank you for that. I think we've all run into that where we've had to pull out of the story.
I just want to say that on the media issue, I have spent 5 months talking to journalists off and on as I've been planning this, and I have not been able to talk any into covering this story. The idea that parents are getting together to talk about eating disorders is not a story. I think it's a story, but unless I could give them the before and after pictures, or I gave up some family that was currently going through hell, which I don't do, this wasn't a story.
Laura, can I ask you about Michelle Obama, and has she ever responded to anything that you said to her?
But we've all, I mean, I happen, you know, I've tried in a lot of ways to do that. I think we're all trying. But again, once something's set, like a policy like that the whole country thinks is so positive, that we just look like sour grapes. You know, it's kind of like, really, take care of your own kid. It's just not a story.
But that message of overall good health for your child in general should be changed from awareness of obesity to overall good health for your child.
We get that. That's what really
This is a wonderful forum. I mean, what I say, we need to go upstream.
Yeah.
We need to say, being a healthy person, you need to eat well and you need to exercise to the degree that you can, given whatever your body's restrictions are. You don't eat too much. You don't eat too little. You don't exercise too much. You don't exercise too little. Because from a public health point of view, all of the focus is on preventing the medical complications of obesity. And what I'm thinking about is, wait a minute, if we really go upstream and say healthy eating, healthy physical activity, in balance, then we'll deal with both of them. So I got a chance to say it. I'm very much.
And also the EDC piece was part part of that effort and a bunch of other organizations, we got together with a member of Congress who wrote what's called a Dear Colleague, where 43 members signed this letter asking Michelle Obama to expand her message in the ways that we're all saying, that get it off of focusing on obesity and instead let's talk about health more broadly.
Make a suggestion there.
The response was that they were going to change something on their website and this and that. I don't think it's happened yet.
You have something you want to say?
No, I was going to point that out, that that seems like a little thing that, that the response was, we'll change some wording on the website. And we don't want to inadvertently cause disordered eating or eating disorders. That's huge. That's a result of all of our voices. That's really, really important. And that's a victory. And it seems like it's not very big, and it seems like it's not enough, because for us it's really not. But if you look at the big picture, and you look at how change happens, that really is a lot. They know who we are now. The White House, the staff, they know the names of those organizations. ADU is a big part of that. That's really important. I want to pick up on what Susan was saying about the organizations and the personal stories. And I could list you thousands of people that have been active at one point and had a voice, and been the family, or been the sufferer, and have chosen for their own health and wellness, or because they have full-time jobs now, or for whatever reason, have needed to back away. And that's just fine. That's actually a good thing. We promote people to take good care of themselves, correct? So I think that the organizations telling the stories, being part when we have the energy, backing up when we no longer have that energy, bringing in this whole new contingency of people that are going to take over when people like Laura and I retire someday is really going to be important. And that overall, the voice, passing free, is going to be an amazing transformation. And I remember hearing from Paul Wellstone, former senator from Minnesota, who passed the first mental health parity bill in 1996, which was a bad bill, and he told me that. He knew that. But built on that slowly over time, and told me when I started this, right after my daughter died, I called him. I said, I know you passed mental health parity, and I have all this energy, and it's rage, and it's anger, and it's hatred, and I have to transform that. I have to do something positive, or it'll kill me. He said, bring that story to Washington. They need to hear that story. That's what's going to change it for everybody. So that's why, I'm here just kind of pounding the pavement. Let's unite. We have all these voices. And we have really strong voices, and we have really strong stories, but none of us can do that alone. So let's, I love it that we're here working together. So, thanks, Kitty.
I'd like to put in a sentence from medical societies, which are now lumping obesity in the eating disorders. And that could be developed as an approach, that we are really talking about eating disorders, including obesity.
Does not necessarily mean an eating disorder. Eating disorder does not necessarily mean obesity.
Eating disorder is an eating. Obesity is an eating disorder.
I think you get some pushback.
That's where medical science is going now.
Well, a metabolic disorder could cause obesity without there being an eating disorder underlying. Is that not true?
I think if that's what they're going, they're driving off the cliff. Laura.
I'm into this whole family, but I had a small thing that came up when we were talking about the public announcement, and it occurred to me that we saw treatment 3,000 miles from home, and I made real close friends with other mothers face to face, and one sent me a photograph of her daughter whose heart stopped for 16 seconds in the hospital in March. And she's back in school and college as a nursing student, and she was in a picture on her first day of clinicals with her best friend. And I saw it, and something about it was like, that's the face of anorexia right there. And so I showed it to friends 3,000 miles away, and I said, here's the face of anorexia. And they could not, they had a huge mind shift, like, well, wait, is this the right picture? Which child is it? There's absolutely no way to detect it.
She's a beautiful girl. And I thought there's something in that, so I just wanted to offer it. It's really that seems to be the face. And we see it every day with our kids, and we thank God every day, but the person who's never seen the disorder, who thinks they know what it is, because I was that person in February, if you haven't really seen it, you have no idea what it is. So I showed about 5 people, and they all had a shift. So I just offer that.
Thank you, Laura. Let's see if there are any questions on this side.
You're saying the face could be any face.
Yeah,
just
possibly. It changes, it shatters the face that you've been told about.
I've ignored this side of the room, and I'll be right back to you. Anybody over here have a question, comment, issue? Morgan, your voice is probably loud enough.
Yeah, I think I can be heard. I just wanted to make a comment about the media, and I think, again, the internet offers the distribution of the media that you want to create, makes that a possibility. Never mind the reporters. They're never going to get it. Their audience is somebody who, it would be nice if we could educate the general populace about eating disorders, but I think we really want to reach those parents out there who are struggling, who call us on the phone, who are desperate. If we can just reach those people, and we can do that right now with the tools we have at our disposal, with the message that we want to craft. CNN Productions is a great example of that. And we need to get those things out in front of more people. I hope many of you will be able to join us this evening at 7:30, where we're screening a couple of films by families speaking out, who are, as was mentioned in the past, moving out of the darkness and trying to shed some light on their experience. So rather than put the patient up, listening to the families and their stories, and I think that's the message we really need to get out. This affects families, not individuals.
Great, thank you. Laura and I argued about this off and on for a long time. Who has the bully pulpit? And I kept telling Laura, you have the bully pulpit. Don't let anybody tell you that it's the doctors or even Dr. Insel. You have the bully pulpit. We should use it.
I want to back up a little bit to going to pediatricians. I'm very curious how many parents in this room, the very first time they took their child to their pediatrician, the pediatrician was alarmed. Was alarmed, did anything. None of them. So, okay, a few. So that's my question, is how do we get pediatricians to be alarmed, especially if we back up and think of this as a developmental disorder. I think my daughter would have gotten help 6 months prior to when she did get help, because the first time we went in, she hadn't had a period for 9 months. She had body dysmorphia, and our pediatrician instructor showed us, oh, that happens to girls all the time. Well, I know better now, but I didn't know better then. How can we get word? We can take these pamphlets home to our pediatricians. How do we get them trained? How do we get them to be alarmed?
Well, I would propose not to get them alarmed. I propose that we get them active.
Okay.
Well, because when I do continuing education programs, people come and say, well, when should you worry? Well, worrying doesn't help you solve anything. It's when should you be aware of what's happening. Yeah. And so I think that we need to get the message out. I and other people in the American Academy of Pediatrics, as I mentioned in one of the other groups, the incoming president of the American Academy of Pediatrics actually has an office just 2 doors down from me, and the executive director of the American Academy of Pediatrics is my colleague and based in Chicago. So I think we can start to work along those lines. The real problem, I think the main way to do this, and actually I've been talking to Lynn Reef and other folks from NEDA is to have continuing education credits that can be done online. Because in order for them to be able to be accredited by insurance companies, they need a certain amount of credits. And I think we now have the technology to be able to do that. I think just keep getting the messages out there. That we need to get that message out there. So
I just got this signal that we have got to end it there. And thank you very much, everybody, for contributing to this.